Okay, today let's look at anatomy of the eye. And you can see this is the structure of the eye. I think it has the eyeball. So, the eye, as you can see, consists of two segments. We have the anterior segment and the posterior segment. The anterior segment starts from the cornea to the anterior capsule of the lens, and then the posterior capsule, the posterior segment starts from the posterior capsule of the lens to the retina. And then the anterior segment is further divided into two. We have what we call the anterior chamber and the posterior chamber. Generally, from the anterior aspect of the eye, we see this structure here is called the cornea. And the cornea is like a windscreen of a car. It allows light to pass through into the eye up to the retina, where the photoreceptors transduce that signal into an action potential and electrical impulses that are taken to the brain through the optic nerve. Initially, when we come back to the anterior aspect, on this cornea here, there is what we call the tear film. And the tear film, when you look at the structure of the tear film, we have what we call the lipid layer, we have the aqueous layer, and then we have the mycin layer. These three structures form what we call the tear film. The lipid layer is produced by the meibomian gland. The aqueous layer is produced by the lacrimal gland. And then the mycin layer is produced by what we call the goblet cells. One of the functions of the tear film is protection and also lubrication. From the cornea, in the anterior chamber, what we call the SC in short, we have the aqueous humor. The aqueous humor is a transparent fluid that is produced by the ciliary bodies, the ciliary processes in the posterior chamber, and then it flows by convection current into the anterior chamber. And then this space you see in between here is what we call the pupil. The function of the pupil is to allow the amount of light to regulate the amount of light that is entering the eye. And the pupil itself is made up of the iris. This iris, it has got muscles that contract or relax to regulate the amount of light that is entering the eye. So we have seen the anterior chamber and the posterior chamber contain the aqueous humor. Then we come to what we call the lens. The lens itself, it has the anterior capsule and the posterior capsule. And as you can see, the lens itself, when you look at it carefully like this, you will realize that posteriorly it's more convex compared to the anterior. And what we need to know is that the function of the lens is actually to do what we call accommodation. Accommodation is basically to focus the light on the retina so that you can have a clear view of the object. From the lens, we come to this big space here, what we are calling the vitreous body. The vitreous body is a jelly-like structure. And what we need to remember is that from the cornea, the anterior chamber, the posterior chamber, the lens, and the vitreous body, they form the optical system of the eye. Meaning, from where the light is coming from all through, these structures are transparent. Any opacification of these structures that we have mentioned will cause poor vision depending on the degree, or they can even cause cataracts. For example, if this lens, we have opacification in this lens here, then lights will not be able to go through, and therefore you will not be able to see, because for you to see, light must get through the cornea, through the anterior chamber, the posterior chamber, the lens, the vitreous body, up to the macula. In the macula, we have a structure there called the fovea that has high concentration of the cones, which are the pigments, what we call the photopigments, that transduce the light signal into actual potential or electrical signals that are picked by the optic nerve and sent to the brain for you to visualize and interpret the image. We can come back to the outer structure. From out, this side here, this is the conjunctiva. This is what we call the choroid. You can use this side. This is the sclera. The white structure seen here is the sclera. The red structure you see there is the choroid. And then the yellow structure you see there is the retina. And then of course what you are seeing in blue color, that is the veins. We call them retinal veins. And what you are seeing here, the red structure, are the retinal blood arteries. And these arteries, this artery you see here is the retinal artery, and it comes from the ophthalmic artery, which is a branch of internal carotid artery. So from this point, the yellow here is the optic nerve, which takes the signals to the brain for visualization. Before we conclude, we can mention something about the ciliary body. The ciliary body and the lens in between here, you can be able to see a structure that is linking the ciliary body and the lens. And these structures are what we call the suspensory ligaments. Their function is to adjust the lens in the process we call accommodation to focus light to the macula for visualization. So what you need to remember is that this structure here, the lens, changes depending on the distance of the object and the eye. Next time we will look at the relationship between diabetes and blindness. Thank you.